Ace teased that interview like it was about to be a final boss battle. Dark, dramatic. Y'all don't even know what's coming, energy. And then the actual interview drops. And it's almost wholesome. Calm. Polished. Supportive people showing up. Community clips. Family. A friend. The vibe was less expose, more rebrand. But that's exactly why one detail landed so loud. Because when everything is soft and carefully packaged, the smallest slip, one word, one tense, tells you what's really going on. And in this case, it wasn't even a slip. It sounded like a decision. So let's talk about what Ace actually did in that interview, why fans are calling parts of it projection, how Shelley somehow leveled up in the middle of the chaos, and why Nick and Olandria's lost Grease footage might end up being the most important piece in the whole Love Island post-show puzzle. Let's start with the part that didn't match the trailer. Ace's promo made it feel like he was about to get grilled. Like he was walking into a room full of hard questions, receipts, and uncomfortable pauses. The kind of sit-down where people walk out looking different. And a lot of viewers expected that, because let's be honest, post-villa life is where the real mess usually starts. But the interview wasn't set up to corner him. It was set up to cushion him. And the way you can tell is by who showed up, and how early. Before Ace even got deep into anything personal, there were people speaking about him like he was already being introduced to the public as misunderstood. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be genuine. It can be earned. But it also does something important. It frames how you hear everything that comes after. When people vouch for you on camera, family, friends, community voices, it quietly tells the audience, even if you don't like what he says later, remember this, he's a good guy. And again, that might be true. But it's also strategy. Because once that foundation is built, the relationship part doesn't hit as, he's moving weird. It hits as, he's learning, and he's growing. Which brings us to the moment everyone actually rewound. When Ace finally talked about Shelley, he didn't speak like someone in an active relationship. He spoke like someone closing a chapter. He talked about learning to communicate. He talked about not coming in on 10. He talked about learning his love languages, and how being with someone teaches you what you really need. And then he landed on the line that always sounds harmless until you've lived it. It's hard to know each other when you're constantly under a microscope. That sentence is relatable. Anyone who's been perceived by strangers understands that pressure. But here's the part fans clocked. He wasn't describing a current struggle. He was describing a lesson he already took from it. He said he learned how to tell her how he feels, the right way. He said he wants to be better, moving forward. That's not, we're working on it. That's, I'm taking what I learned to the next thing. And once people heard that, the debate didn't even become, are they together? It became, how long have they been done? Because if you've watched enough reality couples, you know the pattern. When things are good, they speak in present tense without thinking. When things are shaky, you get careful language. When it's over, you get reflective language, like it's already been processed. And this is where the internet did what it always does. It didn't just listen to Ace's interview. It compared it to another clip that's been floating around. The one people keep calling projection. Now, to be clear, this is where everything turns speculative. I'm not telling you what Ace really meant, like it's fact. I'm telling you what fans are saying, what the optics look like, and why that clip keeps resurfacing every time the breakup conversation comes up. In that speedy interview moment, Ace basically warned about couples leaving the villa, seeing a community rooting for them, and deciding to take advantage of that ship. He described a scenario where people keep up appearances in public, while behind the scenes they want to explore other options. Then he ended it with a strong closer, I don't move like that. And that's the line that made people raise an eyebrow. Because if you're someone who later says the microscope was too much, and that public judgment makes it hard to navigate a relationship, why would you be judging other couples so confidently on camera? That contradiction is what made viewers call it projection. Like maybe he was describing a fear he had about his own situation. Or maybe he was overcompensating, trying to separate himself from behavior he didn't want associated with him. And look, maybe it was just a general comment. Maybe it wasn't personal. Maybe he meant exactly what he said. But the timing is what makes it stick. Because soon after that era of commentary and side-eye, Shelley publicly hinted at the breakup, then seemed to pull back and say she wanted privacy. Ace posted something ominous. Then this interview drops where he's talking like it's already done. So the internet starts connecting dots. And when fans connect dots, the first thing they reach for is the idea of keeping up a front. Not as a moral attack, but as a survival move. Because Love Island couples don't leave the villa into normal life. They leave into expectations, brand deals, appearances, fans who treat a ship like it's a real-world franchise. And once that happens, privacy becomes complicated. Even silence becomes a statement. So here's what's being speculated online, again, unverified, but it's the chatter, that they may have been done behind the scenes before it was allowed to be public. That timing mattered. That contracts, appearances, or just plain pressure influenced when things got said out loud. And that the vague posts and careful wording were a way to avoid turning a breakup into a daily headline. Whether or not any of that is true, one thing is obvious. Shelley didn't crumble publicly. She pivoted. While people were busy debating her wording, she stayed consistent in the one area that always answers louder than a comment section: work. Shelley's True Religion run isn't a one-week post-show cash-in. It's months of steady visibility. The kind where fans start associating you with a brand so strongly that it stops feeling like an ad and starts feeling like an identity. You know how some reality stars do one campaign, post the photos, and you never hear about it again? This didn't feel like that. This felt like repeated placements, repeated content, repeated proof that the brand actually wants her there. And that matters, because consistency is what turns Love Island famous into brand famous. There's a big difference between being known and being marketable. Being known can fade fast. Marketable gets renewed. And the way people talk about it online says a lot. Fans literally describe it like this: when you see True Religion, you see Shelley. When you see Shelley, you think True Religion. That's not just hype. That's brand association. That's the kind of thing a lot of people chase and never get. And then she shows up at the Armani Luminous Silk event. And the storyline shifts again. Because True Religion is one lane. A strong lane. But Armani events are the kind of rooms where people decide if you're just influencing, or if you're transitioning into a bigger circuit. At that event, Shelley's energy looked different. Less post-show glow, more "this is normal for me now." She's taking pictures with fans. She's moving around like she belongs there. And then there's the Coco Jones moment that people keep mentioning, because celebrity proximity always hits the fandom like proof of legitimacy. It's not even about name-dropping. It's about perception. Reality stars live and die by perception. If the public thinks you're invited into higher spaces, your value goes up. If they think you're stuck recycling villa drama, your value caps out. And Shelley, at least based on what's been shown, is playing the long game. Campaigns, events, and a vibe that says, I'm not stuck explaining my personal life to strangers. But the funniest part is that the clip that surprised people the most had nothing to do with Armani. It was karaoke. Because somewhere in the middle of all the serious talk, breakups, interviews, ships, timelines, Shelley pops up in a more intimate setting. Friends. Family energy. People laughing. And she's not just there. She's the life of the room. And then she starts singing. And it's like everyone collectively goes, wait. Hold on. Since when? That kind of moment does something powerful for a public image. It makes someone feel three-dimensional. Not just the girl from Love Island. Not just someone's ex. But an actual person with talent and confidence and personality that doesn't rely on a relationship storyline. And yes, you could feel the internet immediately turn it into a comparison game. Ace fumbled. He missed out. She's multi-talented. Now, is that fair? Not necessarily. Relationships end for a million reasons that have nothing to do with who's more talented or who's more likable. But fandom doesn't run on fairness. Fandom runs on momentum. And right now, Shelley's momentum looks strong. Which is why the Ace interview lands the way it does. Because if you're Ace, and you're publicly reflecting on a relationship that fans are already treating like a loss, you have to be careful. Every sentence becomes evidence. Every vague line becomes a theory. And every old clip gets pulled back up like it happened yesterday. Especially when you've already spoken publicly about other couples, taking advantage of ships. That's why viewers keep calling it ironic. Because the same microscope Ace described is the same microscope he handed to the public when he made those kinds of comments. And speaking of microscopes, let's switch to the couple that's doing the exact opposite of hiding. Nick and Olandria. Because while Ace and Shelley's storyline is being pieced together through tense changes and vague posts, Nicolandria's storyline is being fed to fans like a playlist. First, there's the casual, they went out to eat, vibe. Simple. Cute. Just enough to keep people talking without making it a whole performance. Then Nick drops what he literally called an emergency PSA. He says he was cleaning out his car and found something that's going to revolutionize the game. And if you've been in Love Island fandom long enough, you already know what that means. It means footage. Not a polished recap. Not a filtered montage. Not a brand-safe highlight reel. Footage that feels like it wasn't meant to be content. Which is exactly why people want it. Fans have been talking about grease footage, like it's a missing chapter. Like it's the part of the story that shows what the relationship feels like without the villa edit, without the show music, without the forced conversations. And the reason that matters is simple. Unedited clips expose dynamics. They show who leans in first. Who's comfortable. Who's performing. Who forgets the camera is even there. And in reality TV world, the smallest body language moment can reshape the entire public narrative. So when Nick hints he found something, people instantly start pushing. Are we getting a YouTube video? And he leans in. He basically says he can do that. Then there's the other layer that made fans even more hype. Olandria reportedly getting involved, messaging him, and the plan turning into an actual confirmed drop. Even the collaborator talk had people acting like it was a rollout. And rollouts matter. Because rollouts turn relationship content into events. Now, here's the interesting contrast. Ace's interview felt like an attempt to slow the conversation down. To put things in a mature, reflective box. Shelley's content feels like she's refusing to let personal drama dictate her pace. And Nick and Olandria are doing the opposite of both. They're leaning into fan hunger and using nostalgia as fuel. And when you look at those three approaches side by side, you start to see the real post-Villa game. It's not just who's together. It's who controls the story. Ace controls the story by putting it in a structured interview with supportive framing, talking about growth, and keeping details minimal. Shelley controls the story by staying visible in work and letting success be the loudest headline. Nick and Olandria control the story by dropping content that makes fans feel included, like they're being fed, like they're part of the timeline. And that's why this next Grease video matters more than people want to admit. Because if it's genuinely unedited, it'll do what polished statements can't. It'll either confirm the chemistry fans have been swearing is real, or it'll expose little cracks people ignored because they liked the ship too much. Either way, fans are going to treat it like evidence. And once that happens, the conversation won't just be, "Ah, they're cute." It'll be, "Okay, so what does this mean about where they stand now?" Then it turns into, "So when was this filmed?" Then it becomes, "So why did they post this now?" And before you know it, one found clip turns into a full timeline investigation. Which brings us right back to Ace and Shelley. Because the biggest unanswered question isn't even who did what. It's when. When did they actually shift from "we're together" to "we're trying" to "we're done"? When did the energy change? When did the public version stop matching the private version, if it ever stopped at all? And to be fair, They don't owe anyone those answers. Privacy is real. Boundaries are healthy. Not every breakup needs a public debrief. But the moment you build a relationship in the public eye, people will always look for the missing scene. They'll look for the thing that explains the switch. That's not entitlement, it's just how audiences are trained. Reality TV teaches viewers that every storyline has a reason, a climax, and a reveal. And when they don't get it, they go hunting. That's why the projection clip keeps resurfacing. It gives people something concrete to point at. A moment to analyze. A quote to replay. A vibe to judge. And honestly, that's the real danger of speaking too boldly about other people's relationships while your own is still forming. Because if you ever end up in the same situation, the internet won't let you be complicated. It'll just call it karma, hypocrisy, or a front, depending on what side they're on. So where does all of this leave us? Ace gave an interview that looked like a tell-all from the promo, but played like a controlled narrative reset. He talked about Shelley like a chapter he learned from, not a future he's building. And whether that was intentional or not, fans heard it as confirmation. Shelley, on the other hand, looks like she decided she's not going to audition for sympathy. She's stacking campaigns, showing up at events that expand her image, and casually reminding people she has personality and talent beyond the villa. And Nick and Olandria? They're about to drop content that fans are treating like a missing episode, which means the next wave of discourse is basically guaranteed. Because in Love Island land, footage is currency. And whoever holds the footage, holds the attention. So now I want to know what you think. Do you feel like Ace's interview was genuine reflection, or a carefully padded rebrand? Do you think the projection accusations are reaching, or does that clip hit different now? And with Shelley, is this brand run just momentum, or the start of her fully outgrowing the Love Island label? And lastly, when that Grease video drops, do you think it's going to confirm what fans already believe about Nicolandria, or flip the whole narrative in a way nobody's ready for?